Brethren, it is clear that from God's Word, it says that knowledge will be increased in the last days. And understanding will be increased. Now, we can come to a point and ask the question, are we in the last days? And if we are, then surely understanding is being increased. God told Daniel, close his books up. Daniel, you don't even know what you wrote. But in the last days, they'll understand. He says the wise will understand. Okay, so we can hope and pray that we are studying God's Word and being considered by God the wise, the ones who look to Him through His Spirit for understanding. And I pray that will be the case for all of us. Last week we saw that the priesthood and the Christian church are different people. Now, I hope I was able to convince you of that. If not, I give you many, many passages in the Scriptures that indicate there's something different going on. We talked about somebody receiving the tree of life to live forever, right? And we saw that some people were changed and made immortal. And so we know some are going to be like Jesus and sit on thrones and rule with Jesus. And there's going to be some that sit on Jesus' throne and they will be the bride of the bridegroom. And so there's different stories throughout the Scriptures if we can just keep an open mind and allow God to touch your heart to understand. That's what it's all about, is understanding. I just hope and pray that we all can get to that point where God can teach us and us not be in the way of the Holy Spirit trying to reach our hearts and minds. If you would, go to John chapter 4, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about the woman at the well. John chapter 4, the woman at the well. We know that, we know several things from this passage. I want you to turn there. Let's look at it. In John chapter 4 and verse 9, then says the woman of Samaria. The reason this is a controversial passage is because at this time period there was a group of people living in the land of Israel known as the Samaritans. And God told Israel, or told the disciples, on and on again, don't have nothing to do with them. They're pagan through and through. They're evil and don't have anything to do with the Samaritans. And so here we come and read this verse 9. Then the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask to drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews had no dealings with the Samaritans. Now we have to understand some history if we want to understand truth. And so I want you to realize at the time period, there's a history that goes way back to the time of the Assyrian invasion of Israel. And so we need to see that in that area of Samaria, there were the Samaritans. And again, there were those that was descended from Father Jacob. Go on down. Look at verse 12. And the woman, at verse 11, the woman said unto him, Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From which how you give me living water? Verse 12. And are you greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well? So here it's clear this woman of Samaria is a descendant of Jacob, of the children of Israel. It's very important that you grasp and understand. So we want to know and realize that I am a Tylerite, right? I'm a Tylerite because I live in the Tyler area. All of you, except for Brother Dwayne over here, he's a Palestinian. But the rest of us are basically Tylerites. So let's understand that the Tylerite is because you are living in this area, right? However, does that mean that you are from Tyler? Does that mean your genetics is from Tyler?
No.
Not necessarily at all. Now, I am from North Carolina, so I'm a North Carolinian, right? That's where I'm from. That's where my ancestors come from, that they came over at the time before this nation was a nation. You know, my ancestors go back to the Daniel Boone family. And so we go back many years before the nation even became a nation in 1776. So we realize that is where I'm from, but I'm a Tylerite today. So let's realize the same thing has happened here with the woman of Samaria. If you would go back to 2 Kings chapter 17, and I want you to see a couple things here. It's important as we do these studies is to learn. The presenter can put a lot of time and effort into presenting something, and it's important that we, again, listen to what's being said and then learn from what's being said. This study here is going to take us more into the idea of the different groups of people that Christ is coming to save. But look, if you would, in 2 Kings chapter 17, and let's start reading in verse 22. Now, you know, Israel was the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom. And they went into captivity in 721 BC at the hands of the Assyrian army. Now, this was, several years before Judah went into captivity at the hands of Babylon. But look, if you would, in verse 22 of 2 Kings 17. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam. Jeroboam was the captain of Solomon's army that led Israel astray. And where were they living at the time? If you'll remember, they lived in Samaria. The northern kingdom was in the northern part of Israel, which is the land of Samaria, northern Israel, which he did. They departed not from them, so they were continuing in the sins of Jeroboam. They were polytheistic. They did not keep the Sabbath. They did lots of things wrong. If you would, look at verse 23. Until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight. He said, away with you guys. As he had said by all his servants, the prophets. Because they were warned by all the prophets, repent, turn. If you don't, I'm going to cast you out and cast you away. And so we know that's indeed what he did do. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria, even unto this day. So they were carried out of Samaria, going north into the Assyrian Empire. And at the time Kings was written, what does he say? Even unto this day. So at the time Kings were written, they were still in the land of Assyria. And now notice verse 24. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon. Because, see, Babylon was in the Assyrian kingdom, the Assyrian empire. Babylon didn't become its own empire or the world empire until a couple hundred years later. So we notice here, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cuthath and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim and placed them in the cities of Samaria because they had vacated the Israelites out, right? It had taken them out. So the king of Assyria said, let me go get some of the boys down here in Babylon and let me take them and replace them in the land. We got it. So you understand that. Of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So we see here, these people who came in, they became known as the Samaritans, right? But that's a totally different story than the woman of Samaria. The Israelites were the people of Samaria. But then when they were cast out because of going into captivity, then they brought in other people that claimed they are the Samaritans. Because they were. They were living in the land of Samaria. So now, with that understanding, you can realize why Jesus said, don't have anything to do with the Samaritans. Because they were from Babylon. They were Babylonians, they were pagan, they hated the Jews, And so now they are living in the land there of Israel at the time that this comment is being spoken of by Jesus here in John chapter 4. So when we see the woman of Samaria don't have anything to do with her, then he's saying, she's saying that I'm of Samaria, my father is Jacob. So that's not the people that Jesus was saying don't have anything to do with. So if we understand that. Now, if you would, go to Matthew chapter 10 and let's see the basis of Jesus' ministry. Jesus' ministry in Matthew chapter 10, he tells his disciples. In chapter 10, in verse 5, these 12 disciples he sent forth and commanded them, saying, Go not into the way of the nations, and into any city of the Samaritans enter you not. He's not talking about the woman of Samaria, but the Samaritans. They were not there to proselytize or to save the Babylonians. They hated God. They hated Israel. He says, Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, we need to get this, that Jesus told the 12, you go only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. If you would drop down to verse 23 of Matthew chapter 10, and it says, When they persecute you in the city, flee to another city. For verily I say unto you, you shall not have gone over all of the cities of Israel, not the cities of the world. Notice the verse there. The cities of Israel, until the Son of Man be come. So the disciples, their job was to go to the nations, to gather the people that had been scattered abroad, those who had been lost. Go to them. And he said, tell them, about the salvation plan that God had made available for them to have. Now, let's go back, or let's continue over to Matthew 15, and let's look. Jesus doesn't just say it once. He says it twice. But this time, he says it not to the 12, but he says it in regards to himself. Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. Notice what he says in Matthew chapter 15 and verse 24. Matthew 15 and verse 24. I won't take the time to read the story here of the woman of Canaan about the crumbs from the table, and even the dogs get the crumbs. But you understand, he is saying anyone is welcome to come. But my plan is to go to those the Father has sent me to. Hope you get this. In verse 24, he answered and said, I am not sent. Wow. So someone is sending Jesus, right? And Jesus says, I am not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He didn't say the lost sheep of Israel. He said the lost sheep of the house of Israel. When you're talking about a house, it refers to the two kingdoms. Once Solomon died and the kingdom was split into two houses, the house of Judah and the house of Israel. And so he said, I am only sent to the house of Israel. Now when he came, who did he go to first before this verse was even spoken of? They had already rejected him. And he said, I was by necessity, I should go to you first because you're my own people. But the Jews rejected him and turned from him. So then he said, I'm only now sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, make sure we have that. So, go back to John chapter 4, where we're at, and let's continue on with this woman. There's a lot more in this story than we ever pick up on unless you do a deep study of it. In John chapter 4, this woman, when he was telling her that, how many husbands she had and all that, in John chapter 4, notice verse 19, and the woman said to him, Sir, I perceive you are a prophet. So she acknowledged that this was one smart person, that he was telling her that she'd had all these husbands, and the one she had now wasn't even her husband. And then he says in verse 21, Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour comes when you shall neither in this mountain nor yet in Jerusalem worship the Father, nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship you know not what. Now, it's important. Jesus said, I'm only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Last week I showed you the lost sheep of the house of Israel is the birthright child. Ephraim is a birthright child. In Genesis 49, it says in the last days, that's where the Messiah would be. Where is Messiah? He's in the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Otherwise, his prophecy and his words here in Matthew are untrue. Did Jesus mess up?
Nope.
Absolutely not. So we know that indeed he says, you worship, you know not what. But the Father wants true worshipers. Wow. See, they're not going to worship the Father. You worship, you know not what. But he says salvation is of the Jews. It is through the Jew, Jesus Christ, that we can be redeemed. And he goes on to say, the hour comes and now is, look at verse 23, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father. What do who do they worship?
Father.
The Father. In spirit and in truth. Don't forget that word truth. A lot of people worship gods, but do they worship them in truth? Is what's going on, truth. And he says here, and the Father seeks such to worship him. And he goes on in verse 24, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And the woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, which is called the Anointed, the Christos. When he is coming, when he comes, he will tell us all things. So it just went right over her head of what he was telling her. He was telling her the Father seeks true worshipers to worship him. And she said, I'm looking for the Messiah. I'm looking for Jesus. Right? And then Jesus says, I am he. So she went on to tell her family, and they all got excited and got presumably saved by acknowledging that Jesus was the Christ.
Amen.
He was the one coming to redeem them. Now, brethren, could we ask the question now, does truth matter? And obviously it does. If you would turn on over to John 8 here while we're in John 4, turn over to John chapter 8. And notice, it says in verse 31, John 8, verse 31. He then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, if you continue in my word, then you are my disciples indeed. Wow. What's the word in there that is so critical for us to know is there? Is the word continue. Is it something you can believe for a while and then decide you don't want to do it any longer? No. See, this once saved, always saved gives you the idea that you can believe Christ for a while and then turn from him and go a different direction. In John chapter 6, it says, they departed from him after following him, and they followed him no more. So here we see you have to continue in the word, verse 32, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. That don't mean free from keeping the commandments. That's what some would say. It makes you free from the penalty of death. It makes you now being able to have a relationship with him and know the very plan of God and understand the salvation plan of what this Bible teaches. Turn over to John chapter 17. In John chapter 17. And let's see more about the truth. John chapter 17. If you would, he says in John 17 and verse 17, he says, sanctify them through your truth. So how are people sanctified? It's by the truth. It is the truth that sets you free. It is the truth that sets you apart as being His.
Exactly.
Right? Now, and He says, your word is truth. So He goes on to tell you what the truth is. The truth is the book you hold in your hands.
Amen.
That's the word. Drop down to verse 19. And He says, and for their sakes I sanctify myself, that they also might be sanctified through the truth. So, brethren, how are we sanctified? How are we set apart? How are we made His? It's by the truth. If you're understanding truth, praise God. But it's not what everyone else generally understands, my friends. And you'll see more of that as we go on. So, the idea that indeed truth is something that God uses to set apart those who belong to Him, those who are His. I won't turn to the passage, but I've read it many times. In Matthew 5:19, it identifies there's some, though, they're going to be least in the kingdom of heaven. Least in the kingdom of heaven. It's those who don't keep all the commandments and even teach others not to keep the commandments. So they will be least in the kingdom of heaven. If you would go to Mark chapter 12, and let's see what Yeshua said about the commandments in Mark chapter 12.